In this lesson, we will update the counter twist rig tied to the left shoulder. We're going to learn something really cool in this lesson. Let's go ahead and get started by hiding our model. Alright, from there, this would be a good time to update the axis order on all of our FK controls tied to our arms. Remember, we decided that the axis order was X, Z, Y. That worked very well. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll head over to our motion panel, scroll down, and make sure that we have set it to the second choice, X, Z, Y. I'll pause the video and take care of the others. So once all FK arm controls have been updated, the next thing we'll do is go ahead and switch our left arm to FK mode. It might help to visually see what we'll need to modify in our counter twist rig to get it to work properly. So with the center of gravity selected, we'll go to our modify panel, and let's go ahead and switch to FK. Alright, I'll go ahead and grab the FK shoulder. Let's go ahead and go to our rotate gizmo. Let's make sure it's set to gimbal, and I'll also turn off angle snap. Just hit the A key. Alright, so as we saw earlier, when we go ahead and rotate down in the Y-axis, and as we start to twist in the X-axis, this is ideal. This is going to give us a very clean twist. Now, is this the case for an object that's tied down by an orientation constraint? Let's take a close look at the orientation of our shoulder bone. So we'll go ahead and grab shoulder main and take a look. The twist axis is actually the Z-axis. It's almost as if our constraint rings here have not moved, like the orientation constraint is blocking its rotation. Is that the case? Well, not necessarily. If we were to go to our motion panel and take a look at our orientation constraints properties, you'll see that at the very bottom, our transform rule is set to world. That's why this isn't updating. What does this mean? Should we go ahead and now switch this to local? Well, after all of our connections, we might notice that there's going to be a little bit of a shift if this happens, if we go ahead and switch this now. Now, thankfully, there is a very cool way we can get our twist to work without having to change this transform rule. So that's what we'll learn in this lesson. Let's go ahead and grab the FK shoulder, and we'll use transform to 0 to bring this back. And now we'll go ahead and talk about what needs to happen. We essentially need to create an expression on our anchor object that drives the counter twist rig, so that in FK mode, it looks at our shoulder control here. And then in IK mode, we'll actually have it look at our IK bone object, whose axis order has already been set. Alright, great. So with that being said, our FK control is already good to go. We now need to track the twist axis of our IK bone, and we know we can use an expose node for that. Let's go ahead and create one. So we'll grab expose TM. Let's go and add it to our scene. I think the display is going to work out just fine. Let's make sure we Alt-A align it to one of our shoulders here. It doesn't matter which one we select because essentially they're all the same. We'll now choose OK. Alright, from there we'll rename this object. So I'll go ahead and grab the name of the counter twist bone. Let's go ahead and copy that. And we'll use that for our expose node's name. We'll go ahead and get rid of the prefix bone and replace that with expose. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more to this name. It's going to be tied to our IK bone, so after twist, I'm simply going to add an underscore IK01. Alright, we could also have this stored in our hidden layer, but we will not have it linked to the IK bone, not just yet, because when we set up our variables in the expression, we'll find this expose node a lot faster if it's not parented to anything just yet. Once we're finished, we can have this linked to the IK bone. Alright, so we now have everything we need to create our expression. Let's go ahead and grab the anchor object, and we'll go in, find the zero Euler x-axis. You can see it has been wired to, no worries, we'll go ahead and override it with our float expression controller. Alright, great. So let's go ahead and start creating variables. The first one will be IKFK, and we know that we'll need to tie our button into that. Choose create. The next will be IK underscore twist. So we'll need to feed the twist axis that we get from our expose node into this variable. And finally, we'll go ahead and create one for our FK twist. All right, beautiful. Now with the FK twist variable selected, let's go ahead and assign the controller to it. So we'll go ahead and expand the global node, the center of gravity. Here's the chest control. We'll need to expand our chest bone. From there, we'll find bone L clavicle to expand that. All right, and here's where our shoulder control is nested, right underneath BNDRV NML shoulder. So let's go ahead and expand that to get to the animation controls, zero Euler, X-axis. All right, beautiful. Now that that's taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and skip over the IK twist so we can get to our IK FK. And that we know is tied to our center of gravity. So that's going to be modified object, extra controls, custom attributes. All right, here it is, the left arm's IKFK switch. All right, beautiful. So now we need to tie in our IK twist axis. Let's go ahead and close out of the expression controller so we can go ahead and grab the expose node and make sure it points at our IK bone. You can see we have some information to fill in here. We also have a few things to check out. So we'll go ahead and expose that bone object. And as we start to scroll down, the first thing I'd like to point out is the axis order tied to the expose node. Now, as we start to adjust our axis order on, let's say, an exposed node that we've created prior to this, you might notice that Max remembers those settings. So sometimes you might have to just go in and reset this back to XYZ. But right now, we want our X order to be XZY to match the rest of the system. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is. Now here's something else that's really interesting. If we were to go ahead and take a look at our Euler parameters, you'll see that the x-axis is not zeroed out. So that's going to pose a slight problem. When we switch to IK, we'll notice that the arm shifts just slightly. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to cancel that out so we are left with a zero value. So that's going to be another really exciting topic. We'll have to use a bit of radian math to get that to work. But one thing at a time, let's go ahead and go back to our expression controller. All right, I'll actually want to right-click and choose Properties. There we go. We'll go ahead and grab IK, and let's go ahead and search for that. So remember, we did not link the exposed node, so we should be able to find our local Euler x-axis much faster. Now remember, when we're creating this expression, we're trying to cancel out our twist. So instead of positive values, we'll need to work with negative values. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we know how the base of this expression is going to essentially be spelled out. That's going to be if, and then we'll add our open and close parentheses, and then that's going to be IKFK. So if this is equal to 1 or IK, then we want negative IK twist to take effect. If that's false, then we want negative FK to work. So we'll go ahead and type that in, and we're ready to evaluate the expression. So watch this. Right now we're in FK mode. Watch. When we go ahead and grab the FK shoulder and start to rotate that, notice everything's following. Nothing flips out at all. When we start to move in the Z-axis, all right, that looks good. Again, no flipping. Now here's the exciting part. We still are able to cancel out our twist. Very cool. All right, let's go ahead and set this back. We'll use transform to 0 to do that. Now let's go ahead and switch to IK mode. We'll grab our center of gravity, go to the modify panel, and let's go ahead and set this to IK, and you'll notice that there's a slight shift. Again, it's not too big of a deal, but when our character is skinned, we will see that shifting. So might as well learn how to prevent that in case we're dealing with an extreme case of this shifting and another rig we'll have to create. All right, so again, keeping the arm in IK, let's go ahead and go back to our expression. So here's what we'll need to do. We'll need to manually convert degrees to radians. Here's how we do that. We'll need to work with our calculator because we're going to have to work with a very specific value and add that value into this expression. So I'll go ahead and pause the video and bring up the calculator. All right, here it is. So we'll go ahead and switch our view to scientific because we'll need to grab our pi formula, and we'll now need to divide that by 180. Let's go ahead and find the result. Here it is. So that's a pretty lengthy number, but we'll need all of this information to tie that back into our expression. Now, we're not quite finished just yet. The last thing we need to do is multiply by this by the current degree that we're trying to cancel out, and we know that that degree is tied to our x-axis. So let's go ahead and find that. I'll go ahead and minimize the calculator. If we were to go ahead and select our expose node, head over to our modify panel, we'll see that that value is negative 1.086. Let's go ahead and copy the entire value. So now, going back to the calculator, we'll simply need to multiply by that value. Here's the result. And this is exactly what we need to tie into our expression. So we'll go ahead and copy this. Let's go ahead and close out of the calculator now. And we'll go ahead and add that back to our expression. When we now evaluate this, take a look at the x-axis. When we go ahead and evaluate this and grab our anchor object, you'll see that its x-axis is now set to 0. Before it was set to that value that we have copied, but now that is no longer the case. So what's great about this is, if we were to go ahead and close this out and start to twist the elbow, you'll see that our twist system still works properly. Very cool stuff. Alright, so we have learned some really fun things in this lesson. We've learned how to bypass the orientation constraints twist in order to still get the twist behavior we need in our counter twist rig. So that's really cool. And now we can go ahead and take a look at the next lesson where we'll learn what we'll need to update on the right shoulder to get that to work properly.